January 7th, 1943, New York City. The temperature had dropped to 11 degrees Fahrenheit overnight. The Hotel New Yorker, room 3327, had not been opened in 3 days. The hotel staff knew this not because anyone had checked, but because the Do Not Disturb sign had not moved. When the maid finally entered, she found an 86-year-old man on the bed, fully clothed, in the dark, his body already cold. The death certificate would be signed within hours. Natural causes, heart failure. The attending physician never entered the room. What happened in the 48 hours that followed has never been fully explained by any government agency. Within hours of the body's discovery, before the coroner had been formally notified, before any next of kin had been contacted, agents from the Office of Alien Property, working in coordination with the FBI, had entered room 3327 and removed 2 truckloads of documents, notebooks, and equipment. The man who had died was Nikola Tesla, inventor, engineer, the architect of the alternating current system that powers your home right now, at this very moment. He had filed 300 patents over his lifetime, patents covering wireless transmission, resonant frequency, energy transfer, and systems of power distribution so advanced that several of them are still referenced in research papers today. The hotel key to room 3327 was never returned to the front desk. I found this thread not because I was looking for Tesla. I was looking for something entirely different: the history of electromagnetic frequency patents filed in the United States between 1890 and 1940. And the more I looked, the more I kept arriving at the same room, the same date, the same locked door. The standard account of Nikola Tesla's final years goes like this. Tesla was a genius who had fallen on hard times. He'd had a famous falling out with Thomas Edison over AC versus DC current. He lost the so-called war of currents and then lost his fortune pursuing increasingly impractical ideas, including a global wireless energy tower called Wardenclyffe. He died alone, impoverished, in a mid-range Manhattan hotel, largely forgotten by the scientific establishment he had once dazzled. His work was brilliant but eccentric. His later theories, free energy, directed energy beams, earthquake machines, belonged more to science fiction than to physics. He had become a recluse. He fed pigeons. He claimed to have communicated with extraterrestrials. That portrait most textbooks maintain. And that portrait is true, but it is incomplete in ways that matter. Because the question the textbooks never ask is this: if the man's later ideas were so impractical, so far outside the scientific mainstream, why did the United States federal government need to read every single piece of paper in his hotel room before his family could claim his belongings? Start with what can be verified. Nikola Tesla held 278 patents in the United States alone. The actual count varies between 272 and 300, depending on which patents are attributed and which died in committee. The patents span 26 countries. They cover alternating current motors, radio transmission, remote control, fluorescent lighting, X-ray imaging, and rotating magnetic fields. Nearly all of the electrical infrastructure of the 20th century touches at some point a patent filed by Tesla. Here is the etymology payoff. The word alternating comes from the Latin alternare, meaning to do by turns, to trade places. Tesla understood current not as a flow, but as a rhythm, a pulse.
He described electricity the way a musician describes sound, in frequencies, in harmonics, in resonance. That was not metaphor, that was his actual working model. The U.S. Patent Office, which is housed at the Department of Commerce, 600 Dulaney Street, Alexandria, Virginia, holds the originals. Now here is the first verifiable fact that changes the shape of the story. In 1915, the Nobel Prize in Physics in Stockholm announced that the Nobel Prize in Physics would be awarded jointly to Thomas Edison and Nikola Tesla. Both men refused to share the award with the other. The prize that year went to William Henry Bragg and William Lawrence Bragg, two physicists who had done important but far narrower work on X-ray crystallography. Tesla did not win the Nobel Prize he was publicly announced to receive. And then 3 weeks later, Edison announced a multi-million-dollar contract with General Electric.
Here is where the history becomes uncomfortable, because what disappeared from room 3327 in January 1943 was not the work of a forgotten eccentric. It was the life's work of the man who built the modern world's electrical spine. And the people who came for it came immediately, without hesitation, before the body was cold.
The agency that initially seized Tesla's belongings was the Office of Alien Property Custodian, or AOP, a wartime body created to manage assets belonging to foreign nationals deemed potentially dangerous to U.S. interests. Tesla was a naturalized American citizen. He had held citizenship since 1891. He was not subject to AOP jurisdiction. This is not a conspiracy in the dramatic sense. There were no secret meetings in oak-paneled rooms. It was something more durable than a conspiracy. It was convergent interest, aligned financial stakes pulling the same direction at the same moment without coordination, because coordination was unnecessary. Here is what convergent interest looked like in January 1943. The United States was 19 months into World War II. The military-industrial complex, a phrase not yet coined but already a functioning organism, was consuming patents at a rate no peacetime institution could match. The War Department had standing arrangements with the Patent Office to fast-track military applications. Engineers at Westinghouse, General Electric, and the nascent defense contracting apparatus were working on directed energy systems, long-range wireless communication, and what we would today call electromagnetic pulse weaponry. Tesla had been working on all three since 1900. His writings, specifically his 1908 paper, The Transmission of Electrical Energy Without Wires as a Means for Furthering Peace, published in Electrical World and Engineer, described a global wireless power grid operating on resonant frequency principles. In 1934, he gave an interview to the New York Times describing what he called a peace beam, a directed energy weapon capable of stopping armies from 200 miles away. He said he had already built a working prototype of the core component. The prototype was never recovered. John Grump, an electrical engineer at MIT, the uncle of Donald Trump, was asked by the FBI to evaluate the documents seized from Tesla's room. Trump's official report, declassified in 1980 and held in the FBI's reading room under file number 100-2237, concluded that Tesla's papers contained nothing of significance, nothing that posed a security risk, nothing of military value. The file is still there. Anyone can request it. John Trump submitted that evaluation within 48 hours without reading all of the notebooks. His own notes, held separately at MIT's archives, mention that he reviewed only the portions made available to him. the portions made available to him. The rest of the papers were held under seal by the Office of Alien Property for 11 years until 1952, when they were transferred to Tesla's nephew, Sava Kosanovic, who took them to Belgrade. The Nikola Tesla Museum in Belgrade holds those papers today. Several of the notebooks transferred to Belgrade arrived with pages missing, not torn, missing, as though they had never been there.
His name was Kenneth Swayze. Swayze was a science journalist, not a physicist, not an engineer, but a man who had spent 20 years corresponding with Tesla, visiting him at the Hotel New Yorker, listening to him talk through his ideas in the late evenings. He was 35 years old in 1943. He was one of the people Tesla trusted. In 1956, Swayze published an account of Tesla's final years in Electrical Engineering Journal. He described Tesla in his last decade as still sharp, still specific, still capable of detailed technical description. Tesla had told him, and Swayze wrote this down, that the Wardenclyffe Tower had not simply been a transmission experiment. It had been a proof of concept for a system that would deliver electrical energy to any point on Earth's surface, using the planet itself as a conductor. The resonant frequency of the Earth, the cavity between the planet's surface and the ionosphere, the layer of atmosphere 60 miles up that reflects certain electromagnetic frequencies back down. That cavity has a measurable resonant frequency. It was measured officially by German physicist Winfried Otto Schumann in 1952. It is called the Schumann resonance. It oscillates at approximately 7.83 Hertz. Tesla described it in detail in his lab notes from 1899, from Colorado Springs, Colorado, where he had erected a tower and driven 135-foot lightning bolts into the ground on purpose to measure their return frequency, 53 years before Schumann published his formula. Swayze kept Tesla's letters. He donated them, eventually, to the Smithsonian Institution. The letters are in the Archives of American Art in Washington, D.C. They are available to researchers. They have never been compiled into a single edited volume.
This is not the only time a major inventor's papers were seized, suppressed, or selectively released. Royal Raymond Rife, a San Diego microbiologist and optical engineer, developed a frequency-based cancer treatment in the late 1920s and early 1930s. His 1934 clinical trials, conducted in cooperation with the University of Southern California, reportedly showed full remission in 16 of 16 terminal cancer patients. His lab was raided in 1939. His equipment was confiscated. His research partner, Dr. Milbank Johnson, who was preparing to publish the trial results, died suddenly the night before the publication was scheduled. His papers were never found. The American Medical Association, then under the control of Morris Fishbein, who had a documented financial interest in chemotherapy patents, had been actively campaigning against Rife since 1934. Wilhelm Reich, Austrian-American psychiatrist and researcher, developed what he called orgone energy accumulators in the 1940s, devices he claimed could concentrate biological energy for health applications. His books were ordered burned by the United States Food and Drug Administration in 1956, not banned, burned. The FDA conducted at least 6 burning operations of Reich's publications. This is documented in FDA records held at the National Archives. Reich died in federal prison in 1957. Thomas Henry Morey, a Utah engineer who demonstrated before live audiences, including witnesses from the Salt Lake Power Company, a device he called the radiant energy detector, a box the size of a suitcase that produced 50 kilowatts of power from no visible fuel source. He applied for a patent in 1931. The Patent Office rejected it on the grounds that it was a perpetual motion machine, a classification that precluded examination of his technical claims. His device was shot by a government agent during a demonstration. The bullet holes are in the casing. It still exists. The individual cases each have a conventional explanation. Together, they describe something else. The alternating current system Tesla designed in 1888 is the system delivering electricity to your outlets right now. The transmission frequency, 60 Hz in North America, is the frequency he calculated. The electricity grid, centralized generation, long-distance transmission, local distribution, is the architecture he proposed. It requires copper wire. It requires transformers. It requires a metered connection to every building. It requires a monthly payment. The wireless transmission system Tesla was developing at Wardenclyffe required none of those things. It required a tower and the earth. The tower at Wardenclyffe, Long Island, was demolished in 1917, not by Tesla, who had lost funding, but by the company that held the mortgage on the land. The company was a subsidiary of J.P. Morgan's financial empire. Morgan had stopped funding Wardenclyffe in 1903 after Tesla explained to him, in correspondence still held at Columbia University's Rare Books Library, that the system, once built, would allow anyone with a receiving device to draw power. Morgan's reported response, as quoted in multiple Tesla biographies based on the original letter, "If anyone can draw the power, where do we put the meter?" That letter has never been found in Morgan's archive. The system of paying monthly for electricity, metered, wired, controlled, is still running today.
There is a photograph taken at the Hotel New Yorker, room 3327. Sometime in the mid-1930s. Tesla is seated at a small desk near the window. On the desk there is a stack of notebooks, a glass of milk, a pigeon feather he used as a pen cleaner, and a hotel room key. The key is unremarkable, brass, a number stamped into it, attached to a small fob. The kind of key that gets returned to the front desk when a guest checks out, the kind that a departing guest might leave on the nightstand. Room 3327's key was never returned. It was logged as missing in the hotel records, along with the other items removed in January 1943. It appears in no FBI inventory. It appears in no APA manifest. It does not appear in the Tesla documents held in Belgrade. A small brass key, stamped with a number. It is probably in a box somewhere, in an archive, in a facility that catalogs objects without reading them, inside a folder that has not been opened in decades. And in that same box, or in another box in the same building, or in a facility whose address no one outside a certain clearance level has ever been given, there may be a notebook, handwritten, filled with frequency calculations, sketches of a tower, notes toward a system that would have made the 20th century unrecognizable. We built a world on wires instead. And somewhere in that architecture, in every meter, in every monthly bill, in every copper line strung between poles across every field and city on Earth, is the shape of a decision made by men with financial interests about what the future was allowed to look like. Tesla once told a reporter, late in his life, that his greatest invention
had not yet been built. He did not say it had not yet been